The movie starts with a newly married couple, Jim and Linda. They love each other very much. Jim surprises Linda with a new house, and she loves it. He promises to give her a wonderful life. Years later, they have two daughters, Megan and Bridget. But their marriage is not happy anymore. They stay together only for their kids. One morning, Linda's daughters wake her up and ask when their dad will come home. She says he went on a work trip and will return in the evening. Linda takes her daughters to school and then does her chores. In the afternoon, Linda's friend Annie calls and says it's Thursday. She tells Linda about her plans for the weekend and asks what Linda's doing. Later, Linda gets a voice message from Jim. He tries to say something important, but the call ends suddenly. When Linda tries to call him back, he doesn't answer. Soon, the local sheriff, Riley, visits her. He tells Linda that Jim has died in a car accident. His car hit a truck, and there was an explosion. Linda can't believe it because she just heard his voice message. The sheriff says the accident was terrible, and even the truck driver died. He apologizes for telling her late. After the sheriff leaves, Linda feels very sad and confused. She knows Jim is gone, but part of her feels like he is still alive. She picks up her daughters and tells them their father has died. That evening, Linda's mother comes to support her. Linda's mom talks about funeral plans and insurance, but Linda says she is not ready yet. Later, Linda falls asleep on the couch, crying and holding her wedding photo. She remembers how happy they were on their wedding day. The next morning, something strange happens. Linda wakes up in her bed, wearing different clothes. She goes downstairs and sees Jim's briefcase. On the TV, she hears live commentary about a game. Then she sees Jim sitting there, alive and eating breakfast. He asks if she is okay, and she says yes, but she is very shocked and confused. The next morning, Jim leaves for work because he is late for a Monday meeting. Linda wonders if his death was just a bad dream. She drives her daughters to school and then checks the answering machine when she gets home. There are no new messages, which makes her believe it was only a nightmare. To clear her mind, Linda goes for a drive, but she is distracted and nearly crashes into another car. The police stop her and Sheriff Riley talks to her. However, he doesn't mention their earlier conversation. He only tells her to drive carefully. Back at home, Linda starts her chores. While drying clothes in the backyard, she steps on a toy, falls, and accidentally touches a dead bird. Her hand gets stained with blood, and she panics. She quickly washes her hands, puts on gloves, and throws the bird in the trash. That evening, the family has dinner together. Later, while Jim is asleep, Linda watches him carefully, trying to figure out what is going on. The next morning, Jim is gone again. Linda notices her clothes have changed, the mirrors in the house are covered, and there's a wine bottle on the table. Feeling confused, she goes to the bathroom and finds a bottle of lithium pills with her name on it. When she goes downstairs, she is shocked to see her family and friends preparing for Jim's funeral. Linda panics and insists this is a mistake because Jim is alive. The others think Linda is acting strangely because of her grief. She goes outside and sees her daughters playing in the garden. To her surprise, she notices scars on Bridget's face, but doesn't remember how it happened. When she asks, Megan says there are no scars and that Bridget looks like a beautiful princess. Later, everyone goes to the church for Jim's funeral. Linda is convinced Jim is still alive and demands to see his body. Her family tries to stop her, saying Jim's body is badly injured, but she doesn't listen. Linda tries to open the coffin herself and Jim's mutilated head falls out. Everyone is horrified. After the funeral, they gather at the grave to pray. Linda notices a strange woman watching from a distance. She approaches the woman and asks who she is. The woman says she talked to Jim yesterday, but Linda doesn't remember this. The woman apologizes and drives away. At home, Linda checks the bottle of lithium pills and sees it was prescribed by someone named Dr. Roth. She is confused because she doesn't know this doctor. When she looks for his phone number in the phone book, she finds that the page is torn out. Linda notices the trash can and finds the missing page from the phone book. She uses the number to call Dr. Roth, but it goes to voicemail. That evening, an unknown man arrives at Linda's house with Sheriff Riley. The man introduces himself as Dr. Roth and asks if Linda remembers him, but she says she doesn't. Dr. Roth and Sheriff Riley accuse Linda of hurting Bridget. Linda can't remember how her daughter got the scars, but she insists she would never harm her. Despite her protests, nurses grab Linda and take her to the hospital. At the hospital, Linda hears Sheriff Riley telling Dr. Roth that Jim died on Wednesday, though they told Linda about it on Thursday. Dr. Roth is confused because he remembers Linda visiting his office on Tuesday, worried that her husband would die. The two begin to suspect Linda might be involved in Jim's death. They give her a sedative to calm her, and she falls asleep. The next morning, Linda wakes up in her house. She hears a sound in the bathroom and is shocked to see Jim alive, taking a shower as if nothing happened. Overcome with emotion, Linda hugs him tightly. When he asks what's wrong, she can't explain. Later, she notices that Bridget has no scars, which makes her very happy. After dropping her daughters at school, Linda returns home and sees the backyard trash bin. She opens it and finds the dead bird still there. Terrified, she checks for the lithium pills in the bathroom but doesn't find them. Looking in the phone book, she sees that Dr. Roth's number is still on the page. She tears it out and keeps it with her. Later, Linda visits Dr. Roth at his clinic. She tells him about the strange events happening to her, including how her husband dies one day and is alive the next. She says she doesn't know what is real anymore. Dr. Roth, who doesn't recognize her, says she might be having nightmares. He confirms he never prescribed her medication before, but gives her a new prescription for lithium pills. After this, Linda goes to Jim's office to tell him about the strange events. She suggests they leave town with their daughters, but Jim says he has work to finish. Their conversation is interrupted by Claire, the woman Linda saw at the funeral. Claire introduces herself as Jim's assistant. After a short introduction, the two leave for an important meeting. Linda watches them and sees how well they get along. This makes her very sad. When Linda gets home, she picks up her lithium pills but decides not to take them. She throws the bottle in the sink. Later, it starts to rain, and Linda asks her daughters to bring the clothes inside. Bridget runs quickly and does not notice a glass window. She hits it and gets hurt. Linda takes Bridget to the hospital, and Jim comes there soon after. Thankfully, Bridget is okay, but she has scars on her face. To help her feel better, Linda hides all the mirrors in the house. When Megan asks if the scars will stay forever, Linda says there are no scars and tells Bridget she is perfect, like a princess. That night, Jim is upset and he argues with Linda. He thinks she is not well and cannot take care of the children. He tells her he asked her mom to come and help. Linda feels angry and finds a torn paper in her pocket with Dr. Roth's number. She throws it in the trash, but then remembers she has seen the future. She realizes everything happening is connected, but she is confused about the order of events. Linda writes down what she knows. Jim died on Wednesday, but he was alive on Monday. His funeral was on Saturday, and that was also the day she went to the hospital. On Tuesday, she met Dr. Roth, and Bridget got hurt. She figures out the order and confirms that Jim's death happened on Wednesday. Linda talks to Jim and asks him to delay his trip, but he refuses. He says he has waited for this trip for a long time and thinks it will be good for the family. Linda asks him to do one thing: wake her up on Wednesday before he leaves. Jim finds this request strange but agrees. The next morning, Linda wakes up on the couch holding her wedding photo. She sees her mom and realizes it is Friday, which means Jim is already dead. She finds a paper with the name Claire and remembers seeing her at Jim's office in the funeral. Linda goes to Claire's house and says they need to talk about Jim. Claire admits she was having an affair with him. Linda feels devastated. Later, Linda goes to the bank and finds Jim's insurance papers. She meets an insurance agent who says Jim made sure their house and children's education would be paid for. The agent explains that Jim visited him on Wednesday morning before the trip and looked very nervous. Jim increased the insurance benefits to make sure his family would have enough money if something happened to him. After learning everything, Linda understands that Jim truly loves their family. When she gets home, her mom asks about the funeral plans. Linda calmly says that everything is ready and the funeral will be the next day. Her mom is surprised by how calm Linda is and how she can manage everything so quickly. That night, Linda drinks wine in her bedroom. Her mom checks on her, and Linda asks if letting Jim die is the same as killing him. Her mom, confused, says Jim is already gone, and nothing can change that now. The next morning, Linda wakes up in different clothes next to Jim and realizes it's Sunday. She suggests that Jim spend time with their daughters, and he agrees. After Jim leaves with the kids, Linda goes to a church. She tells a priest about her strange experiences. The priest shares stories of people who had premonitions like Linda, but they couldn't change what happened. He warns that people who lose faith are more vulnerable to bad things. He says it might be a miracle, but Linda doesn't feel that way. He advises her to have faith and fight for what matters in her life, but Linda doesn't know what to fight for. After this, Linda drives to mile marker 220, where Jim's accident happened, to understand what occurred. She looks around and starts thinking about all the recent events. Later that night, Linda watches Jim playing with their kids. Suddenly, she asks Jim if he loves them. Jim is surprised but says he loves them more than anything. Then the kids ask if he loves their mom. Jim hesitates but says he does. However, it's clear from his face that he doesn't feel as close to Linda as before. Later, Linda is alone in the backyard and it starts raining. When Jim comes home, she tells him she misses how their relationship used to be. Jim says they have a family, kids, and a house, but Linda says time is running out. Suddenly, a nearby power line explodes and a dead bird falls into the yard. The couple rushes inside. Linda apologizes to Jim, and they grow closer and share an intimate moment. Afterward, while lying together, Jim senses something is bothering Linda. She tells him she dreamed about his death. Jim comforts her, saying it's just a dream and everything will be fine. The next morning, Linda wakes up and realizes it's Wednesday, the day Jim is supposed to die. Linda searches for Jim everywhere and finds a note saying he will drop off the kids before going on his trip. She quickly gets in her car to find him. Meanwhile, Jim meets with the insurance agent and increases his death benefits because Linda's words from last night made him nervous. After that, Jim gets into his car and gets a call from Claire, who is waiting for him in a hotel room. However, Jim feels guilty and tells Claire he cannot be with her anymore. Then he calls home and leaves a voicemail saying he loves Linda and the kids. This is the message Linda heard at the beginning of the movie. Just after that, Jim gets a call from Linda on his phone. She tells him that she knows about his affair. Jim says he wants to fix things between them and will do whatever it takes. Linda is almost crying with happiness when she hears this. She then tells Jim that she is right behind him in her car. Jim pulls over, but Linda gets scared when she realizes they are at the accident spot. She tells him to turn around and leave quickly. While Jim is turning his car, another car almost hits him, but everything seems fine. Linda feels relieved, but then she notices a truck coming toward Jim's car at high speed. She runs to him and yells for him to get out of the car. Jim sees the truck and tries to open the car door, but it is stuck. Sadly, within seconds, the truck crashes into his car and both vehicles explode. Linda has a breakdown as she realizes Jim's death was inevitable. She understands that she unintentionally caused it. The scene moves to a few months later. Linda's daughters wake her up and tell her the moving truck has arrived. The family's leaving the house. As the movie ends, Linda remembers the priest's advice to fight for what is important. Then she gets out of bed, and it is revealed that Linda is now pregnant.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.